How many stocks should I own? Is there such thing as too many stocks? Is one index fund enough? Is two index funds too many? Have you ever felt like this?
Have you ever?
Wake up. S&P's up. Oh, the FTSE's down. Do I need both? This is your 8 a.m. breakfast news. Vaccine announcements cause shares in pharmaceutical companies to soar.
I think there are very few great investments at any one time. So the ability to concentrate is an enormously valuable asset of a strategy. The problem with it is it leads to bumpier returns.
In a world where a single stock can rise 600% in 12 months, or you can buy all of the world's businesses with just a click of a button and forget about it, what's the right thing to do? Should we be spreading our money far and wide? Or should we just focus on one particular index? Or even just a handful of specific companies? This, ladies and gentlemen, is a question about diversification. And to a beginner, diversification can be really confusing. So as always, I'm going to look at textbook definitions, credible science, and the wisdom of the world's best to show you my thoughts and opinions on how I approach diversification. So let's start with diverse, adjective, showing a great deal of variety, very different. So in this example, that lots of variety, those loads of different things, just refers to the amount of different shares you have in different businesses. With the more businesses you own, ultimately the more diverse you are. By spreading your investments across lots of businesses in lots of sectors, you reduce the risk of having all your eggs in one basket and ultimately of you picking the wrong investment. The fewer the investments you have, the more concentrated the risk is and the more you feel it when one of those stocks goes up or down in value. So we diversify to smooth out those up and downs. But can we be too smooth? Here comes the science. Because diversification is such a personal preference, there's loads of academic debate on what the correct levels of diversification really are. Can we have too much of it? Can we have too little? There's solid arguments for both sides of the debate. But one thing that we can all agree on today is the ultimate level of diversification would be to own every single business in the world. And the least diversified person in the world would only own one individual business. So based on those parameters, what is a scientifically acknowledged reasonable amount of diversification? A study by two guys called Sir and Price concluded if you had a choice of every stock on the New York Stock Exchange and pick 60 of them at random, you would get about 90% of the diversification benefit of buying the whole New York Stock Exchange. So that's it then, 60 stocks, that's the magic number. Not quite. The problem is, Sir and Price's study only looked at the New York Stock Exchange, so it's focused on America. In order to be truly diversified, you would need to own shares in every single stock exchange in the world. Here is a list of all of the markets that you would need to cover, and here is a list of just a few of the sectors you would need to consider. It's sensible logic, I guess. In order to be diversified, you need to cover all of the bases. You need to have a selection of stocks from every single marketplace in the world. But who the hell has got time for that? So rather than wasting my time and picking hundreds if not thousands of different shares to invest in, what I could probably do instead is just pick a random selection of shares. Yeah, I might not be Sir and Price diversified, but I'm still going to get some of the benefits of diversification in the market, and I could just focus on picking out the best businesses, right? You could, but the problem is, what if you get it wrong? And here's the kicker. A study entitled The Capitalism Distribution by Eric and Cole looked at the performance of the top 3,000 businesses in America over a long period of time. And what they found was pretty shocking. 39% of the stocks over that time period were unprofitable. 18.5% of the stocks lost at least 75% of their value. 64% of the stocks underperformed the Russell 3000, which basically means 64% of the stocks in the index underperformed the average rate of return of all of the 3,000 businesses combined. How can more than half of the businesses not make as much money as the overall average of the index? Well, that's because 25% of the stocks were responsible for all of the market gains. So following the science and trying to achieve perfect diversification really is a mind-boggling process. And just focusing on a few select stocks is risky business. So that's why, in my opinion, we need to stop looking at diversification as this science. as a perfect formula where we must represent every single market in every single sector to ensure that we get the perfect balance of risk and reward. That's a lot of work, and quite frankly, when I hear about doing that amount of work, I just switch off. It reminds me of Pokémon in a way. Pokémon. When it was the original 150 Pokémon, it had me by the balls. I remembered every single Pokémon and I was proud of it. But then they go and introduce another 878 different types of Pokémon, and I just feel overwhelmed by it and I'm just not interested anymore. Diversification on a scientific level is as intimidating and mind-blowing to me as the introduction of 700 new Pokémon was to my 11-year-old self. So as is tradition, when I want to take complex scientific financial matters and boil them down into an easy, quotable, bite-sized sentence, I look no further than everyone's favourite 90-year-old investing guru. Warren Buffett said, "Wide diversification is only required when an investor doesn't know what they are doing." On face value, that quote could almost be offensive to anyone that owns index funds, myself included. But a little context here, guys. The investor who knows exactly what he is doing would only ever buy one company at a time. The reason he would only ever buy one company at a time is because he would know that that company is about to rise more than any other company on the stock market. So it'd be pointless owning more than just one company. He would put all of his money into that one investment. The reason he would do that is because he knows exactly what he is doing. Warren Buffett owns around 60 different stocks at the minute. So even he doesn't back himself as a one investment, Hail Mary kind of guy. Even Warren Buffett is diversified. But at this point, we need to be real with ourselves. Yes, we want the benefits of the stock market and investing. Yes, we all want to retire rich and happy. But what Warren's saying here is, not many people really know what they're doing. I don't, you don't, he certainly doesn't. The more you diversify, the more you reduce risk, but the more you also reduce potential reward. That is true, and that is why Bill Ackman, the guy in the video at the start, who is a professional investor, hates diversification. But the less you diversify, the less businesses you own, the more work you need to do in figuring out which stock to buy, because of the increased need to know what the fuck you are doing. That's why it's my opinion that diversification shouldn't be looked at as a science, as a magic formula. Instead, it should be viewed as your own confidence in your ability to pick out a winning stock and to know what you're doing. While it might be true that the biggest prizes go to the guys who are really good at picking out individual investments and backing one company at a time, the average rate of return on index funds historically has been so good that this is why the diversification debate rages on. If the average rate of return on index funds was 1% versus stock pickers at 20%, there wouldn't be a debate. The reason the debate exists is because picking individual companies is hard, whereas slapping money into an index is pretty straightforward. Now, while historic performance isn't a guarantee, most are happy with the historical 9% average of index funds. That's why I focus about 70 to 80% of whatever I invest on a monthly basis into index funds, because I don't back myself nearly enough to be hyper-focused and just pick out a few individual stocks or shares. I don't sit here thinking that I'm smarter than Warren Buffett or Bill Ackman. But with the other 20 to 30% of my funds, that's the money I use to pretend like I'm a genius, to have a go at investing in individual companies to see if I can hit the big time. And that 20 to 30% is only really a reflection of my own comfort in my ability to pick out winning stocks. 2 years ago, that percentage was near non-existent. And really everything just kind of went into index funds. I bought a few bits here and there, but nothing of note. And in another 5 years, I might be even more confident in my abilities and only putting 50% of my funds into index funds. The level of diversification is a direct reflection of your own confidence in your ability to make good decisions when picking out individual shares. Just always remember, if you knew exactly what you were doing, you would only ever invest in one business at a time. But for now, I like to always have an index fund with a world focus. Give me the whole world in one purchase. I want instant, I haven't really got a clue what is going on levels of diversification. My thoughts on if you can have too many index funds? Well, I already own the world. From there, I just want to have fun with it. Even though through my global index funds, I own everything anyway, I can then add other indexes in if I think those indexes have potential to do well. Diversification doesn't need to be a science. Instead, see it as you saying through your portfolio how confident you are in knowing what is going on. But the world index funds at one end of the scale, and at the other end is that I've just put all my money into Tesla because that's all I need, because I have massive cojones and I like putting everything on the line style of investing. Bill Ackman in the intro at the start was talking about how he doesn't like diversification and he thinks that you should be concentrated in your approach, which is interesting because he actually owns a few different businesses. So even he is diversified. The reason he says he hates diversification is simple. He makes his living convincing other people that he knows what he is doing. Imagine if you turn around and said, yeah, I want to take a 5% fee, but all I'm going to do is whack the money into world index funds because well, I don't know what the hell's going on.
Ride with me if you ride with me, you can slide with me if you feel like 550 on the 5 sticky, come get high with me, that's a deal, right?